Ah, F off with that rat's tit. Batman Beyond. It's not Oblivion. It is World of Warcraft. The Wolf of Serbia. All right, everybody who's here, if you are new, which none of you are, but if you are new, you will subscribe, you will like this video, and I won't answer your questions. This is Two Crook. He says, finally, a stream early in the morning, 12:30 in the a.m. I don't care about that Montreal time zone. It is 11:30 here. By the way, the book was delivered. Excellent. Actually, hang on. I'm gonna go get my book because I got a grift for you guys. I'm gonna go on mute. Y'all behave. I said, yeah, that's right. This is my book that Two Crooks just ordered. It's called The Place of the Believers. It's about all the groups in the Middle East. It's 317 pages. (152 citations) and 22 images, all done in 2 weeks. My best nonfiction by far. By far, it's on Amazon. The link is in the description of this video. So buy this if you're a real fan. Doesn't mean you have to buy it today, but it will be there. It is waiting. Your cover won't be teal. Your cover will be navy green, one of the best colors of all time. You walk into a store, the men are wearing navy green sweaters, the stair is carpeted navy green, you are in a place of wealth and class. Much like this bird. So from now on, this bird just runs the whole channel. Like flying by, giving people advice. Ooh, hello, Gene. I'm the bird of the day. Well, hello, Mr. Bird. Do you have any advice for the people who are watching this channel? Don't be a Neoplatonist. Yeah. So it's late at night, so we're doing kind of like a crazy episode. Oh, you gotta stop mentally masturbating. I'm gonna bite you. Someone's gonna clip this stuff. No, I'm not drunk out of my mind. I just wanted to have some fun with you guys. I'm gonna touch you. Yeah, so we're gonna put toucher in the rye over here. And all right, we got Saul Weber says, props, Gene. I really liked your Otras book. Well, thank you. I don't know which one. I've got a few out there, so thank you very much. Only got 18 viewers. I don't expect this to be a huge stream. Forewarning, this will be cash. I might have stuff that I'm like, I'm not gonna do anything in the background, but I really, we'll talk, we'll hang, we'll do whatever. Jeem is hypnotizing me with that dreamy Arab stare. Well, that says more about you than it says about me, my man. Imperator says, I'm only up because of bad weather. Which state are you in, by the way, Warhammer? I never knew which state you're in. Oh, Strawberry? Sorry about that. Do you want the PDF version? We can work out. I don't know, you Venmo me or whatever. Or not. I mean, if you want one of the really, really old ones, you've been a pretty loyal guy to this channel, so maybe I'll just, who knows. Anyway, Batman, I'm going to touch you. Yeah, all right. Okay, so let's get into it. As you can see on the map that I first placed here, which I know will piss some of these, like, dorks off. Actually, there's no such thing as Italo-Celtic. It's actually Latino-Celtic. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I like generalizations. I think that life can become very boring when you become too specific. Like, you should generalize some stuff. It's okay. I didn't get my master's degree. I don't have one, but if I did, it wouldn't be in, Celtic racial theory. So if I generalize, too bad. That's what I'm trying to introduce, a subject that none of us are the master in. I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at it. The bird reminds me of a certain someone who does nothing except mentally masturbate. I don't know. Like, here's the thing: there are quite a few people that Warhammer and I have as mutual friends. I don't know which one you're talking about. To be quite honest, I don't know which one, because there's just a few options there, and either one could be pretty funny. Gene the book will be released when? You guys want an autobiography? I think I'm too young for that. Like, how cocky do you have to be like my age? Yeah, here's my life story, even though my life is not even half over. All right, we're gonna do a share screen right now. Here we go. Oh, so as you guys can see, this is a map of Europe, or Middle Eurasia, if you want to be like specific, but whatever. So here's the map. I'm gonna read out some of these. It says migration era Slavic. What in the world does that sound? You guys ever watched the South Africa World Cup, where it's just like kazoos? That's what it sounds like outside. Anyway, that aside, forewarning you, there are some things wrong with this map. Like I said, I like to generalize. So this is a very general map. It has some things wrong. I wouldn't say that Slavs are migration era, but Germans are not, because the Germanic groups are themselves the migration people. Anyway, and I also disagree with Norway being part Celt or whatever. Clearly, this guy forgot to do the Finno-Ugric race, but whatever. This is a very generalization here. As you can see, we have a couple of different groups. We have Celtic and we have Insular Celt. I think what he meant to say, other than Italo-Celt, which I kind of disagree with, just Continental Celt, and then Islander Celt would be the best way to put that. So Celts are Portuguese, Spaniards, and all micro-Spaniard groups within Spain. Not everybody in Spain is the same dialect or ethnicity. The French, obviously. It says most of Italy, but I'm going to have to contest that, to be honest with you. And then in terms of insular or island Celt, we've got Ireland, which includes Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, and England itself. So this is a very general map. I don't find it to be that great, but I wanted to put it up here so we can all get a general idea of what we're talking about. Okay? We will, I'll mention that topic in a minute. What are you guys talking about? Which side do you support? Of the Baltics? I don't know anything about that, but whatever. Slavs, baby. The Greco-Turkic switcheroo of the 8th century. Yeah, Chris, I didn't make this map. I agree it's trash because you can't even tell what is going on. So, trolled you. I got you guys. I do bad maps on purpose so that people come into the stream because I know it's going to piss them off. All right, so here's a proper map now that you guys are patient enough. If we take a look at this proper map, you can see that the orange is Germanic peoples and that the blue, and this is again not current modern day, but at the time of this, whenever this was, this is kind of in the early period of the Germanic migrations. As we can see, you have the blue being Celtic spread, and the orange is Germanic spread. It should include Spain and Portugal, and obviously you're going to see Ireland, but I think what it means is a later Celtic spread. So you see that part of Anatolia is there. That has kind of nothing to do with Turkey as of this day. As of right now, that doesn't have a lot to do with Turkey. But if we take a look at this mediocre map, bad as it is, you can see that the Germanics are concentrated in the northern part of Europe. What does that mean? Well, even though there's a country called Germany, Germany is not actually where Germans come from. And it's kind of the same thing with Arabia. Arabian Peninsula, okay, very technically the northern part of it is where the Arabs come from. But most of the peninsula is actually not where the Arabs come from. So the Romans kind of overgeneralized two areas, Germania and Arabia. So actually both those names are Roman. So you can call something Germany, call another place Arabia, you are using a Roman description. And so the Romans called the place where Germans live Germania. The first time they met Germans was where? In Germany and in Gaul. So they called that area Germania. They didn't know, hey, actually these guys originate in Norway or Sweden, Gotland, and so on. But as a matter of fact, they do. So the real heartland of Germanic DNA is going to be northern Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Norway. That is where the Germanic people come from. The like OG Germanic people come from. So people in Germany are, of course, vast majority Germanic, but they're also quite diverse. They're made up of specific tribes or clans of Germanic peoples that are found specifically in that area that may not be in other areas, number one. Number two, they have mixed with people who used to live in that land before them or came to live in that land later after them. So the further east you go in Germany, the more people will have Slavic DNA. And it doesn't mean that they're part Russian or something. Those are Slavic peoples that already lived in the eastern part of what we now call Germany. For example, if you go further south and further to the west, there are more Celtic peoples there. That's why Germans can look quite different because, yeah, there are the OG Germanic tribes. And then there are some of the people that they mixed with. As you can see, you look at France, that is Celtic in this map, but you have to realize that DNA alone is not everything. So here's another one, the Germanic one. So you can see the Germanic map here. The heartland is up here in the north, which I was already talking about. We also have substantial Germanic DNA in the UK, which is exactly where you think it would be, where the Saxons dwelled. So you can see that. Now, if you look at Brittany and France, where some of the Brits went, there's an absence of German DNA. That's not that much, because those Britons were the original Celtic people that had fled from the wrath and the invasion of the Saxons. So Europe, when we say Europe, it's really just three main groups. And yeah, there are all these subgroups, and people get mad and mention all their little subgroups, but it's mainly Europe is Celtic, Germanic, and Slavic. If you're in the east, it's super majority Slavic. If you're in the west, it's Celtic and Germanic. And even then, Celtic and Germanic DNA is not world-alteringly different. Like, they're already kind of similar. It's more just in terms of their dialect, their linguistics, their ancestry, but they're not alien to one another, to put it that way. As you can see, the most German areas are in northern Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Sweden. Obviously, all of Germany is majority Germanic, but the further south and the further west and slightly east you go, the less pure Germanic that it is. France, as you can see, a quarter of it is partially Germanic, which means most people are going to have their DNA from Gaulish peoples. In the southern coast, you're probably going to have some transmigration of people from Iberian Peninsula, who themselves were Celts, but again, different types of Celts. Italy and North Africa as well. So you can see that all right here. So those are the Germanic peoples. Now, what about the United States of America? Well, let's open up my favorite website, which is MIP chart. Let's get a little. Oh man, that's bright. I'll be like Sam Shamoon. Why you do this, man? Why you do this to me, man? All right, so we look at this here. This is Victoria 3, right? And you can make your own maps on map chart. I like Victoria 3 because if you do detailed world map, it does every single subdivision, including tiny little ones in Lebanon, and it just makes the map kind of harder to load. So if we did a color for the Celts, like let's do kind of a dark yellowish, right? We would see them here. Now again, there are many different types of Celtic peoples, and we're not talking about culture per se or language even, just about original ancestry, okay? So this is where you'd find most of them. And yeah, Belgium is actually majority Celt, believe it or not. Then for the Germanics, let's do like what? Different family and so on. Germanic groups. I think we should go a little darker, guys. Yeah, there we go. Okay. See? Now, the Germanic groups come from where originally? Scandinavia. During the Great Period of Migration is where most people of European descent actually get their ancestry from. So that means that most people are Western Europeans and even Slavs. Most of your DNA is coming from a period called the Migration, where there was favorable weather up here in the north, there, near Scandinavia, and the population grew immensely. They then came down here, spread immensely, as you can see. And this is a very rough map. This is me kind of goofing around. Okay. And that's why so many of the dynasties of Italy, for example, are Germanic. And the dynasties of Spain and France are Germanic. Like, who are the Franks? What is France named after? It's not named after the Gaul people. So the Gaulish tribes, the Celtic tribes, the Romans called them the Gauls. They called the whole place Gaul. That's not what France is named after. It's named after the Germanic tribe called the Franks. And that word comes from free people originally. So the Franks were the masters culturally, civilizationally of France, even though they weren't the original people that lived there. And even though the original people, the Gauls, or the Gallic people, were not Germanic, they adopted the fusion of kind of Romance and Germanic culture. That is what France is. Okay, it's a fusion of Celtic and Romance coming from languages like Latin, obviously being the core root language, and then that Germanic rule. So the Germanic tribes, even though they never became the majority of people in Spain, for example, they also ruled Spain. You had the Visigoths. On the other hand, you had the Ostrogoths closer to the Italian peninsula. So the Germanics kind of, spread out everywhere. And you even have Germanic groups going here into the Balkans, and they end up moving back closer to the Italian peninsula. That's why in Italy, you have a region called Lombard. Okay, where's that? Lombardy. That's named after the Lombards, which themselves are a Germanic tribe. People in the far north of Italy, so this kind of crescent right here, many of them have majority Germanic DNA. You may say, well, who are the Italians who were living there before the Germanic tribes came? Surely not everybody's Germanic, right, Gene? That's true. Again, people are mixed for the most part. So you're going to be, if you're in the north, you will have Germanic DNA, but you'll also have that native Italian. And the native Italian DNA, we could just say we're Latin tribes. Latin tribes were ethnically, genetically, whatever you want to say it, closely related to the Greeks. So the further south you go, the closer related to North Africans and Greeks the Italians become, such to the point that Sicily was never really considered Italian until Garibaldi united the peninsula. That's a different topic entirely. So originally the Romans are a combination of these Latin tribes and people of ancient Greek ancestry. And they found the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire is so infatuated with Greece that its religious pantheon comes from Greece. Zeus becomes Jupiter, right? Ares becomes Mars. Poseidon becomes Neptune, which all the planets are named after, etc. I think Aphrodite becomes Venus, right? So they name all these, and they even say that Heracles, who turns into Hercules, founded the city of Rome. So they were very proud of this Greek heritage. Of course, they had their own Latin culture. They were a little more civic, more disciplined and order-leaning, whereas the Greeks were more on the intellectual wisdom side. Let me check some of the comments now. Okay, no migration of the Slavs have never happened in the 6th and 7th century. There's a pseudo-history created by the Berlin Congress. We, the South Slavs, were always in the Balkans. Don't mistake what I was saying. I do agree with you, and I said the map was wrong, because if it's going to call Slavs migration, it has to call Germanic migration too. So Serbs and so on did not come from Russia. I agree with you there. Macedonians, Montenegrins, they're not from Russia. They're not from Ukraine. They were always there. They are the natives of the Balkan Peninsula. Even if some whack job politician said, oh, we're Slavs who are squatting on Macedonia, they are from that area. Whether you want to argue who's more native, them or the Greeks living in North Macedonia area, that's a topic I'm not going to touch with a 10-yard stick. But Southern Slavs are just Balkan people who speak a Slavic language. All right? They're not people who came from Ukraine or Russia. And you could even argue that the further north you go in Russia, the more Germanic, Scandinavian DNA you get in the first place. I don't know what "we" means here. All right, whatever. I'm going to continue. Yeah, I knew the Slavs would get into fights about this stuff. Like, you Balkaners are so much more serious about the ethnic part than people in the Middle East, to be quite frank. Frank. Oh, see? Enfranchised. Frankish thesis is now correct. Joking aside, I do believe in part of the Frankish thesis. Okay, so there we're doing my version of the map because I can't find any good maps. I think they're all kind of rat's dung. You guys know my opinions on that. Like, these are the Greeks, okay? There you go. This is ancient map, by the way. All right, this is what's going on here. The Greeks. Yeah. All right. We'll deal with Turkey another time. Now, I would say that the Latins are a little different than the Greeks. They're not literally the exact same. So perhaps we do a slightly different color for them if it doesn't blend in with the background. Yeah, I guess that's fine. Okay. So they're somewhat similar to the Greeks. I would not say they're literally the exact same as the Greeks, other than maybe some examples down there, but we'll get into that later. So as you can see, these are the Germanic and Celtic peoples. I'm not doing population density in this map, so I'm just going to cover everything the way I want to. The more Germanic part of America is actually up here. Like this is the heavy German part of America, United States. Okay, I may make an error here and there. And then the Celtic part of Europe, or America, which comes from Europe, obviously, would be more here, and actually here. Because the people who are English, there's also Scots Irish that were there too. And you got northern Mexico and whatever. We'll get into Mexico another time. I will admit I'm not the master of that one. Whoops. Y'all are Italians there, right? Okay. So there, Celtic versus Germanic, Canada. Two crooks can correct me, or America, but I would say that most of Canada is Germanic, and then the French Canada is going to obviously be more Celtic. Now, again, this does not count for culture. So just because France and Spain and Ireland are all Celtic, they're clearly different cultures, right, guys? So a true cultural map, I would have to color the Celts down here a different color. Or actually, rather, what we can do while we're sitting here is just color the Celts up north a slightly different color. There. So they're both Celts. That's why the colors are similar. But there's a difference between continental and then and these there. So you get what I'm saying. But this is just a very general map. You understand that? So we're gonna stop sharing that one. This is my custom map. It's obviously not perfect. Don't cry about it. So what's interesting is that if you look at the Germanic peoples, okay, many of them come from migration. So like I said, if you are of Germanic ancestry, you come from that high population during the period with which there was a lot of agriculture and enormous population growth in Scandinavia. They migrated down into Germania, pretty much destroyed the Roman Empire, ruled everything from Portugal all the way up to Germany and beyond. So a very powerful, influential race, such to the point that I would say Germanic tribes kind of built the modern West. I mean, unless you have a direct link back to this Celtic ancestry, even Celtic ancestral people, unless you're in Ireland or Wales or something, are going to be dominated by a Germanic governance, which is based on a fusion of Germanic and Latin culture. So kind of picking up the pieces of the old Latin Western Roman Empire, fusing that with their own Frankish, Visigoth, Gothic, etc. terms of society. And so that's how you have these origins there in that part of the world. I don't really care about haplogroups, okay? Yeah, see, I knew it. I knew the second I mentioned Slavic stuff, you guys are going to be squabbling about who's this and who's that. Batman Beyond, I told you guys I'm not the master, but from the DNA that I've seen, people who are Slavic Macedonians are not like barbarians who arrived with Russia or something like that. They probably have mixed with people, and there are people in Greece who've mixed with people too. So I'm just saying that everyone kind of has some kind of a claim to the land, which I'm not going to get into. I would not consider Armenians living in Armenia. I would not consider to be Middle Eastern anymore. But when Armenians were living in Asia Minor and Anatolia, and a lot of them still to this day live in Syria and Egypt and Lebanon, those are Middle Eastern. But the ones who are now in the country of Armenia, they definitely have their own culture, which is kind of, now that they're not in that fusion of the Ottoman Empire, the differences are a little more obvious. Now, Armenia is an Indo-Aryan or Indo-European language. Okay, so Armenians are Indo-European. Their language is most closely related actually to Greek. So Greeks and Armenians are kind of the only Indo-Europeans that are not Slavic in terms of their language. Not Slavic, not Celtic, not Romance, not Germanic. They're kind of their own thing. I guess you could throw Albanians into that mix too, but I don't know that much about Albanians, to be frank with you. Oh, Frankish thesis is right, guys. All right. I have another one I want to share with you guys. Uh-oh, my tribe. All right, so here's the Afro-Asiatic languages. Now, Indo-European is one language family. Afro-Asiatic is another language family. It's really, really broad. Indo-European can be anything from parts of Pakistan all the way to England. So it has nothing to do with ethnicity, obviously, because those people are not related. Um, it's a very, very broad category. But because Arabic and Hebrew and Aramaic are part of Afro-Asiatic category, it's incredibly hard to learn those languages. Doesn't matter if you're ethnically a Greek and that means you're kind of close to the Lebanese. That has no bearing whatsoever on linguistics. It will be very difficult for you to learn it. Very, very difficult. The same as learning Mandarin or Cantonese. So obviously in the Afro-Asiatic categories, you have Semitic. So Semitic language, in this case, 99% is going to be Arabic. Before the spread of Islam and before the spread of some of the Arab tribes prior to that, the languages in North Africa are all going to be Berber, as it says here, Amazigh, all right, or Berber, but that family includes many peoples who are not Berber, like the Tuareg. Point is, those were what are considered Kemetic or Hamitic, if you're going to use the Old Testament category to describe that. Those are those kind of languages where, yeah, they're still a family to Arabic, they're similar to Arabic and Hebrew, but they weren't the exact same. That's why the Old Testament considers most of the continent of Africa, at least North Africa and East Africa, for the most part, to be Hamitic and not Semitic. And there are some Hamitic peoples in the Arabian Peninsula that it describes, but that's neither here nor there. So these are the majority of the languages here. Like I said, this has nothing to do with ethnicity. Now, it just so happens that everything above southern Algeria does happen to be closer to one another than they are to everybody else, pretty much. So people say, well, Spain and Northwest Africa are linked, right? Look how close they are, and they have the period of Al-Andalus. That's all nonsense. Spanish DNA, even after all those centuries of the Berber, North African, Arab society in Spain, they're not Arabs, they're not North African. Like, they have some, especially down in the southern part of the coast. They have some admixture, but their core is still Celt-Iberian. Like, they are still a Western European people. Their DNA is extremely different. In fact, people from Northwest Africa, some Moroccans and Algerians, are further away from most Europeans than people from the Levant, who are geographically further away. So, it goes to show you that geography does not always solve everything. You can't just say, oh, these two peoples are really close to each other, therefore they're similar. No, they're not. Moroccans are very far away, DNA-wise, from Europe, whereas Lebanese are closer to Europe by way of like Greece and southern Italy and stuff like that. And then not talking about culture. We're just talking about ethnicity here. So you guys understand that. Do you think Iran is Middle Eastern? Kind of. I think that Iran is like the gate of the Middle East. It's as far east as you can go, and I'll still consider it kind of Middle Eastern, but not really. The reason I say no is because I think the word Middle East really just means Egypt and Arabian Peninsula and Levant. I think that's pretty much what Middle East means. It means those Semitic and Hamitic peoples in that area, and part of Anatolia as well. Because historically, not everything in Turkey was just one country cut off from everything else. There were a lot of what you'd call Semitic peoples living there. And even the ancient Hittite DNA has been discovered to be quite similar to Lebanese DNA, believe it or not. But Iran has its own culture, and they don't seem to be Middle Eastern, but they're involved in the Middle East. I hope that understands. Hope you understand that. Saul says Ethiopia has Semitic roots. Yeah, that's correct. That's also why if you see on the map, all right, Ethiopia, there's a direct correlation between where Christians live and where the Muslims live, and the Muslims live in the purple areas, and the Christians live in the green areas. And the green means Semitic, and the purple is called Cushitic here. Now, Sudan would have been Cushitic as well in the past. Anyway, the point is, Ethiopians are considered a Semitic people by the dynasty of the Solomonic dynasty, so King Solomon. Gene, where do you belong? You could pass as someone from the Balkans because you have Dinaric type features. What does that mean? Dinaric means Serbian, right? Or is it Illyrian like Albania? I've gotten Albanian before. People said, oh, dude, are you Albanian? Now, my family is almost entirely Lebanese. Now, again, you get into what does that mean? Like, who are the Lebanese technically? But I'm not going to get into that. We're just going over some very basic introduction here. But the point is, I didn't want to dwell on these because I've dwelled on these a lot. And this is, there are many different forms of Semitic languages, but the main thing that I want to focus on is that, the West was built by these Germanic dynasties. Many of the royal families, including the Tsar of Russia, had Germanic or partially Germanic ancestry. Everything from, like I said, the Visigoths in Spain, to the Franks in France, to the various Germanic tribes of Germany, the Holy Roman Empire, the Ostrogoths, Lombards, etc. in Italy, the Normans, right? All of these groups have their Germanic origin. And so there was a point in time when the Chalcidids, who were Muslims from North Africa, invaded Sicily and southern Italy. And they had an alliance with the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, against the Germanic tribes. Because there weren't even tribes at that point anymore. Like, there were tribes, but they were now settled. The Germanic dynasties were ruling all the Italian peninsula. They eventually, Italy acquiesces primarily to Germanic rule. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean everybody just turns into a German. It just means they were under Germanic rule. The further north you went, the more people had the Germanic ancestry. The food is also quite a lot different there. I remember I was reading something from Kings and Generals, watching their video. They said that there was this priest from Lombard, a bishop, and he went to Constantinople to meet emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire. And he was just complaining about how everything's different. Like, all these people eat olives and olive oil and like garlic. They don't eat meat every day. Where's all the butter? Where's all the lard? You see the massive cultural difference there. And so that's when you have people saying, well, the Holy Roman Empire is Roman, Eastern Roman Empire is Roman. My own personal bias aside, I think all scholarship is pretty clear that the Eastern Roman Empire was the cultural continuation of the Roman Empire. If you want to talk theology, should it be Catholic, Orthodox, whatever, that's a totally different point. Because technically you could just be Catholic and still claim Eastern Rome and just be a Melkite or a Byzantine or something. But no, the Eastern Roman Empire is clearly the continuation of the Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire is more like descendants of the Latin West ruled by Germanic tribes. So the Gallic Romans of France now come under the Franks. It's a Germanic society. That's it. Like, there is a difference. And so if we get into the realm of theology a little bit, you'll see that there is a great difference between Germanic Western European theology and non-Germanic theology. I was going to say Eastern, but there's so many different types of Eastern, and there's other types of Western theology that are non-Germanic. So right now, guys, we're leaving the domain of formal theological debate. We're not talking about Catholic versus Orthodox per se. We're talking about culture. Still gonna touch you. All right, toucher. Hang on. Just give me a second. I mean, this is really not good. No, this map is not good, dude. Nope. Just want a simple ass map. Whatever. This one will do. It's not great, but it'll do. Okay, so here we have these principalities of the Eastern Slavs. Like, see, why can't they just say Kiev and Rus? But whatever. As you can see, the green is going to be Catholic. The purple blue is going to be Orthodox at this time of the Great Schism, or maybe slightly before it, to be totally honest with you. Yeah, a lot of Italy's population was slain or displaced. So that's why there's such a heavy cultural divide, because the northern half is very culturally Germanic. Now, again, that doesn't mean, hey, how come they're not like Swedish people and Germans? It's Germanic tribes, but obviously they're going to adapt to the land that they're in, eat the food in the peninsula, and whatever tribe they were is the culture they're getting it from. So if you're a Lombard Germanic, you're going to be different than a Frank Germanic, who's going to be different than someone who's from Sweden. You get it? make a great point about Iran, but I think the Arab conquest helped to assimilate Iran to the Middle Eastern identity. Yeah, I would say kind of like that's why I said it was half-half, because Iran always has its own caliphate and emirates going on where they're a little different. I would say Iran is closer to Turkey. So Turkey and Iran are part of that Persian or Turco-Persian cultural milieu, whereas Semites, Arabs, Levantines, whatever you want to call them, they're their own version of Islam. We're just talking Islam. But anyway, let's go back to Christianity. So if we take a look at this stuff here, again, is a very basic generalization. There are differences, okay? There are differences between the West and the East. In the West, there's a higher emphasis on God's wrath. Now, the wrath component shouldn't be underplayed in the East. The East did think, yeah, God's going to punish people. He's going to, lay the hammer down on people who do heresy. They're very focused on heresy. But for the West, the focus of punishment wasn't technically about heresy, at least at the start. It was more about guilt and your own sin. They had a much darker image of God overall. And so this is where you get the idea of descriptive eternal conscious torment. Now, I believe that the decree of Hades or hell is final. So when you are sentenced to your judgment, that judgment is it. Now, someone like David Bentley Hart would say, not so fast. Everybody will be judged and punished. The wicked will be punished way more so. But then afterward, God forces them to be purified, or whatever his position is. That aside, the judgment is real. That doesn't mean that God just kind of watches people that he's roasting on a kebab for billions of years. I think quite clearly, and I'm going to get flack for this, I don't think the New Testament teaches that. I don't think the New Testament teaches that God puts you on a kebab skewer and you're just going to roast for like 10 billion years and he's just going to like watch you and look at you. And for some reason, everyone in heaven will be happy about that and their morality will be inverted. Yeah, I don't believe that. So like when Calvinists say, the most glorious feeling will be when you get to heaven because you're elect, not those rats shit non-elect, but you're elect. You'll get to heaven and you'll just be so happy that everyone else is roasting. The problem is, when you combine predestination with eternal conscious torment, you are making God very, very evil. Like beyond way more evil than anything Satan could be. Yeah, I'm saying that. That is true. If you say that God made hundreds of millions or billions of people, let's just say hundreds of millions, because up until recently we didn't have so many billions, and I'm pretty sure global population will go down, which honestly is kind of a good thing. Like, I don't know why everybody's freaking out over that. Economy aside, it is actually a good thing. But anyway, not to the point that these like technocrats want, but yeah, I don't think we need 20 billion people on Earth. Anyway, the point is, as I was saying, this whole idea that God just creates people that, regardless of foreknowledge. So what does it mean, foreknowledge? Foreknowledge describes that God's predestining you to heaven or hell based on what you did in life because he knows ahead of time what you did, right? Well, Calvinism combines that but gets rid of the foreknowledge and says, no, God just for some reason creates people that he knows he's going to roast for millions of years for the sole purpose, regardless of what they did in life, for the sole purpose of displaying his own sovereign power in the universe. Yeah, Chief, I don't think that's in the Bible, especially combining that with eternal conscious torment is pretty bad. Now, if you were Calvinist, the only way I could really respect you is if you were an annihilationist. You can say, yeah, God did make people that he knows are going to roast, but they're only going to roast for like 15 years. Well, that's still pretty like salty, but that's a lot better than millions and hundreds of millions of years, right? Like Jonathan Edwards and other people, the laser eye memes, like, oh, it's a good thing that children are going to, yeah, I don't even want to get into that. Point is that comes from Western Europe. And people that say, well, you see, it's all this complex theological stuff. What a lot of these theology nerds don't get is that much of theology is linked directly to history and culture. And many times people will invent a theology that they think is totally sound because of the cultural milieu that they've been brought up in. And so to the Franks, I'm not just going to say Franks, everyone's going to think I'm just copying Romanides and believing everything he says, even though I know he's wrong on quite a few things. So the Germanic tribes and even some of the Celtic peoples who were living in Europe had this feudalistic way of looking at God and looking at hell. They understood that if you sinned against a serf and you were a serf, the punishment is 100%. So you get the full punishment. If you are a serf and you sin against a noble lord or a feudal lord, the punishment is 300% because the feudal lord is better than you and you sinned against a better power. So you get a more of a punishment, right? Now, if you sin against the eternal infinite God, you get the eternal infinite punishment. Now, it's not just talking about time. Yes, the decree is final. I'm pretty sure everybody believes that in Christianity. But the infinitude part renders this weird image, a grotesque image, where hell has to be the most infinite torture possible. It becomes very, very grotesque. And so that's where you get Dante's Inferno and the like demons ripping off people's toenails and scraping their butts with it, and you do that for 10 billion years, and then you throw them into a jar of barbed wire and salt. Like, it's just so mean just to be mean. I know it sounds like childish, but it is true. Like, this is mean to be mean. And it comes from feudal theology. This is a feudal practice. I've put this in many of my books. It's in the Misunderstood Bible. It's in the Edge of the Void, and I mention it in the Misunderstood Apostle, which is about St. Paul. So this idea that, you have to get the infinite torture because you oppose the infinite God, it's not found in the East. The East is like, no, the judgment is final. There's nothing you can really do about it if you're judged. But it does not have to be the infinite torture. You understand that? I'm going to read a few comments. Two Crooks, I did go to North and South Italy relatively recently, and the cultural divide was real. Sicily felt Lebanese, Rome and Venice felt more European Italian, and Milan was an outright modern EU city. That is true. There is something mentioned of 3 different heavens. There's also the New Jerusalem and the kingdom of God Christ proclaimed. Yeah, that's the new heaven, new earth in the eschaton. That's a physical event. So the new heaven, new earth, you'll have a body of some kind, but it probably won't be like this kind of body that you're in right now, but you will be physically there. It's not just like an ecstatic experience. Also, this whole sinning against the infinite deity stuff kind of discounts animal creation, wildlife as well, because it focuses so much on soteriology. And in case you guys didn't realize, this is why I got so burned out and sick and tired of hearing about Catholic versus Reformed theology, because it's just 600 years of soteriology. It's like, how do you not get sick of that after a while? It's just 600 years of the same topic over and over again. Lutheran, Arminian, Calvinist, Thomist. It's like, please. Like, the entirety of church history, just 3 guys, is just St. Augustine, is just Thomas Aquinas, is just Anselm. Everything else is rat's tits. It's like, I got really sick of that real fast. I don't want to hear about predestined infants in the kebab room. I'm getting a little sick of it. That's why I got sick of hearing about that. Not just because I think it's personally distasteful. I just think it's wrong. I think it is historically and theologically wrong. And people spent 6 centuries debating this, and they never got anywhere. And it's like, I'm out, dude. Like, you guys couldn't solve this. Why would I solve it? Let's just go east. Forget it. No, but really, I mean, you can be a Catholic and not fall into that trap of Thomism and stuff. I think there are plenty of good Thomist and Calvinist people. I just don't think they've accurately thought about their doctrine. If you actually believed that hundreds of millions of people are going to go to hell for eternity and get the infinite torture, wouldn't you be running crazed out of your mind, going from person to person, desperate for them to convert so you can save them from that infinitude torture? When you go and order McDonald's is LA. If you went to Wendy's and you see the cashier, you think, oh, that cashier was super sweet to me. She's a nice girl. Well, if you believe in that theology, there's a really high chance she's going to just be tortured for eternity. Don't you want to do something about that? It's like, none of these guys want to do anything about that. Let's just sit on Twitter and dunk on the Eastern Orthodox. But your own theology says that God created people that he's going to torture for no reason other than to show his sovereign power. And he's going to do it for hundreds of millions of years. Let's just dunk on the monkey Physites, the Copts. Let's just dunk on the Copts on Twitter. It's a better way to spend our time than trying to save all these poor people. Nah, forget that. Like, that's what makes me think they don't actually believe in this stuff. So I know that was a rant that has nothing to do with Europe, but it actually does, because we were talking about Reformed versus Catholic stuff. I mean, I don't think these guys believe that. Do you guys think they actually believe in eternal conscious torment? Yeah, I bought a hamburger from this farmer, bought some beef from this farmer. He's probably going to be tortured for hundreds of millions of years, but that doesn't bother me. I got my beef. I can make my burger. Like, you guys you don't believe in that. Like, these guys don't believe in that. I'm sorry. Imperator says there's a difference between Thomism and Neo-Thomism. That's true, and you can be Thomist light as well. Like, you can be Diet Coke Thomist. You can say, yeah, I believe God does predestine people, but he does foreknowledge, and it is based on who we are, and you do have to try in life, and not everything is so black and white when it comes to metaphysics. And if that's your belief, I can definitely respect that. Even we might have a few disagreements. What I don't respect is people who are super hardcore extreme, LARPing like they're in the 1400s. Same goes with the Reformed. Like, some of this stuff is not biblical, guys. This high emphasis on hating everybody and thinking God is this super evil, diabolical mastermind who's just trying to get billions of people to roast forever. I don't see that in the Church Fathers. I'm sorry. Let's get back on topic. Is this not what the Catholic Jesuit did? They were very missionary. Did what? Any thoughts on Britain? I did speak about Britain. Britain, the word for Great Britain, comes from the Britons, the original Celtic people who lived there in the British Isles, cousins of the Irish and the Welsh and the Scottish and the Cornish and etc. Brittany in France is named after the Celtic Britons who left to get away from the violence that the Angles and the Saxons had brought to the British Isles. So a lot of people living in the western half of the British Isles, not including Scotland, but the southwestern half, particularly in England, are of predominantly or at least partially Germanic ancestry. All of the ruling families have all been Germanic ancestry. There's even a joke in the movie, the TV show on Netflix, The Crown, where I think Prince Charles goes to Wales to learn about their culture and take on his title of Prince of Wales. And they even kind of like make a joke like, so what did the Celts look like? Were they, 2 feet tall and hairy? So they clearly knew that, hey, we are the Germanic Saxon English, and these are these, rats, balls, Celts, to be a little profane there. But no, I mean, obviously, I enjoy reading about both of their history. I've never really gotten huge into Scottish history. I really don't know a lot about it. I think that they were clearly an uncivilized people up until relatively recently. And then they very, very quickly became quite a progressive nation, I mean. So they went from like, we're just going to be illiterates who raid into towns and like murder and grape people, to actually Occam's razor. Like, they went very quickly, John Locke, into the Enlightenment. I think it's quite astounding how quickly they did that. The Irish, I've always liked reading about the Irish. I think the Irish and the Britons themselves, those early Christians, were quite a humble, very mystical, spiritual people. And that goes to show you that there are many spiritual schools of thought in Western Europe. It's not all just like, I'm a tough Dominican Thomist and you got predestined to get whooped by me in a debate. Like, there are many paths of Catholicism in Western Europe that are quite respectable. Nathaniel says, Gene, is the fall of Satan a greater fall of man? If so, could the inverse affect some of the heretics' theology? I know what you mean. Like, when Satan fell, did mankind fall? No. I think Satan fell because of pride. Adam and Eve's fall is a little bit different. And that was definitely a free action. It's another thing with these triple predestination guys. How do you explain Adam and Eve committing that first sin when they were not yet corrupted by original sin? Like, why'd they do it then? What compelled them? Marcello Manchev. Jim, here we go. Is this the ante-Nicene stuff? All right. What do the ante-Nicene fathers mean? When they're saying the Son was first in the Father's womb and came forth, or inside the Father's rational power, isn't that two-stage logos theology? Yeah. Some of the church fathers, ante-Nicene, had incorrect theology. That's okay. Like, when I say that, it means that they didn't communicate it properly, or they may have got one or two details wrong. Like, Tertullian's Trinity is not the same as Nicaea Trinity. But the point of these councils wasn't to erase history and invent something new. It was to uniform all these ideas. because everybody was aware we have the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. All three of them are persons. All three of them share the same essence. But at what time did the Son come forth? Is it eternal? Is it not eternal? Is it 1 millisecond after God the Father established the cosmos? That's what they were arguing about. But for all intents and purposes, everybody did believe in a form of the Trinity, unless you were announcing yourself to be an Arian. What Marcello just described is not Arianism. The Germanic tribes, that's right, going back to the Franks, Saxons, they did not believe in this, and they did not believe in Arianism. Arius was a highly intellectual Neoplatonist. He thought that the Son was eternal in a way, like he didn't exist at some point, but God always had that potential to bring him forth. And via acting on that potential, the Son is the created logos, but still not out of nothing from the bosom of the Father. So what some of these ante-Nicene fathers are saying is in between Arius and Nicene Christology. It's not full-on Arius, because Arius will straight up say there was a time there was no Son whatsoever. Whereas what Marcello is describing is, no, the Son was always there, but he wasn't this like singular, active, distinct person. Again, that's wrong, and we know that's wrong now, but there was a lot of disagreement in the first couple centuries because there was no uniformity. The councils were few and far between. Most people didn't hear about them, and they couldn't organize the church. Those were all corrected, and the Arian crisis was dealt with, and that's not Arianism, as I've said. That's not Arianism. Oh, Strawberry says, you said they believe in the concept of deity that'll damn people to infinite torture, and you were like, wouldn't you be going evangelizing? Yeah, and obviously I know that Jesuits and others did go evangelizing, so they were very consistent with their thought process. I think part of it was also to do with the conquest and change of this culture. It wasn't all about soteriology. But yes, there are many people that went about soul saving, but I'm saying specifically the people who actually take the time to study the theology, who aren't just like pastors who are going out, hey, I'm here to save your soul in Nigeria or something. But the guys on the internet who are learning all this Thomist stuff, not just Thomist, I'm mentioning them a lot, but it's mainly the Reformed. If you really think this, why aren't you going out and helping people? Like, why are you just dunking on monkey physites on the internet? That's my problem. Jim, do you consider Copts and Muslim Egyptians as different ethnic groups? No, they're the exact same. Copts speak Arabic. They don't speak Coptic that much. It's a rare liturgical language that some people in some villages might know. Copts speak Arabic. Muslim Egyptians speak Arabic. The Muslim Egyptians might have more ancestry from Arabia, but it's not going to exceed 10 to 15%. So they are, in fact, mostly native Egyptians. Arians believed that Jesus was a creature who was God-given. Yeah. So there is a difference between saying the Son is subordinate but eternal versus actually he's not eternal and he's just made out of like nothing, like a rock. Am I opening it up? No, I don't think so. I don't want you guys to cope and eat. Young Gamer Dream, would you see the Caucasus as part of Europe or as part of West Asia? I don't understand why we see ourselves as European. You guys ain't European. I'm sorry. If you're not Germanic, Celtic, Slavic, or literally in Europe but of some other stock like you're Hungarian or Greek or something, you ain't European. I mean, Greece is as far east as you can go and still call yourself European to the south. Russia is as far as you can go and still call yourself European to the east. That's it. Now, people in Russia are not all Russian. People in like Kuban in the Caucasus, even though they're part of Russia, Chechens and Dagestanis, they're not European. Doesn't mean you're, brown, right? It's brown stuff. You can still be very pale and just not be European. the Caucasian race or whatever. I think it's very outdated now, but people say the Caucasian race came from the Caucasus. Whether that's true or not, they're not European. Like, you're not part of European history. Your neighbors are Persia, Dagestan, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire. That's got nothing to do with Europe. I don't think you guys are European. I think you're not Middle Eastern either. You're just your own thing. You're part of West Asia. You can say Eurasian, but I would not say Europe. I find that to be disingenuous. Yeah, the reason that Christians have this more pure DNA is just because they didn't have access to marrying the peoples that the Muslimin did, but the Muslimin are mainly locals. Unless you're in the desert areas that are sparser. By desert, I also mean places that have grass but are just drier. Where the tribes actually moved in, okay, then you may actually be from an Arabian tribe. For the most part, the people are the locals. There were Arab tribes that went to Lebanon, though, so it doesn't just track that nobody in the Levant has tribal DNA. I would even argue that post-Islam, there's less tribal DNA entering into the Christian families than there was before. Because post-Islam, to have the tribal DNA mainly meant you were Muslim. And if you're a Christian, you're not going to marry a Muslim unless you're going to become a Muslim. So that's it. You're not going to have any more Ghassanids coming in. So I think all of the Arabian DNA or tribal Arab DNA that could come to the Christians, whether Jordanian, Syrian, Lebanese, Palestinian, was going to arrive before Islam, not after. So ironically, the Christians became Arabized before Islam. If we're just talking about tribal lineage, if any of them have tribal lineage, which some do, it's probably going to be from before Islam. Like, there are Christians in Baalbek that I point out in my book, and they dress just like the Saudis used to dress before they had the whole white t-shirt look that they have now, the white robe, the keffiyeh. They dressed that way. And there were a lot of other people that dressed that way. 2 things changed in Lebanese dress style. 3 things, actually. Number 1, they became westernized. So wearing t-shirts and stuff like I'm wearing now, well, I'm American, but if you're in Lebanon, you wouldn't be wearing a t-shirt. You wouldn't be dressed like a Westerner until just a couple centuries ago. Number 2, uniformity with mountain culture. So the Maronites were the dominant political and cultural party, and their culture of dressing as a mountaineer, Lebanese, spread across Lebanon, even in the places that have nothing to do with the mountain culturally. And so dressing what looks like a tribal Arab, but really could just be an ancient Syriac way of dressing as well, began to disappear. And then what was the third one? I think it's just those 2, to be quite honest with you. Also on Bulgaria, I like their cheese, and I think they're cool people. Do you think Middle East, North Africa will end up being more like Central Asia? No. Central Asia is becoming more religious. Like, the heavy days of the Soviet Union making it totally atheist is kind of going away, other than Tajikistan. I think everywhere else is becoming a little more religious, but nothing like Arabia. Yeah, many Saudis, contrary to the meme from other Middle Easterners who call them brown Bedouins, are also naturally pale. This race never ends. Yeah, I don't think that... I wouldn't say all Saudis are pale, but many can be. Many. But one of my closest friends is from a country in the Arabian Peninsula. He's very pale. He's got lighter hair color than I do. Another friend of ours, a mutual, also from a Gulf country, a different one, again, very pale dude. Like, I don't want to talk about men's skin, but the point is, like, don't stereotype. Many Saudis have the Mediterranean skin, and, in previous times when they didn't live in air conditioning and didn't have BMWs, they'd just be in the sun all day getting really dark. Egyptians are also dark, but they're not Bedouins. I would say pound for pound, Egyptians are probably a little darker, to be quite honest. Non-Hellenized Egyptians. So there's a lot of Egyptians who have Greek DNA in the far north. The ones who don't live there, ironically, the Copts probably have the least Greek DNA, pound for pound, because they don't live that much in the north. The Copts live in the center of Egypt, around Cairo, and then across the Nile Delta, down all the way into the south, which bleeds into Sudan. Um, they're not that Greek. Like this Salafi meme that like the Copts are like Ptolemaic Greeks is actually the opposite. Thoughts on old calendarists, and then Father Joseph Suedon shows up from NFTU. We think about us all the time. He is an old calendarist, true Orthodox. I'm half Kazakh. In Kazakhstan, it's secular. The religion is an ethnic identifier. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that's going to happen. Like, I know Kazakhstan is pretty secular, but Central Asia is becoming more religious again. Nothing like, Saudi Arabia, but it's just becoming more religious. North Africa is not that secular. It just means that in the cities, people wear t-shirts and, watch movies and listen to music. They're not as hardcore as some Salafi in Syria or something, but they're still quite religious. Like, you can't tell an Egyptian that, hey, man, we're getting rid of Islam. But that's not going to happen. Pork. It's Cairo. I call him Pork sometimes. And here's his brother. His brother, Prick. It's Prick and Pork. Anyway, this is his toy. So, yeah, I don't just keep stringed birds in my house. This is his toy. I'm going to end the stream in a little bit. Let's see, what did anyone else saying? Why did you stop being an apologetics channel? Is that to moi? Or are you talking to Father Sweaton? Anyway, I will still, dude, I just spent like 20 minutes explaining not Frankish, but like Germanic feudal theology versus the East. So I still talk about theology. I just don't find the desire or the need. It's more about necessity. I don't find the need to like debunk everything. I mean, I debunked the top atheists. It wasn't hard. I don't want to keep doing it because I'm going to use the same like 10 arguments, right? They're going to mention animals. I will say I'm the preeminent animal theologian par excellence on YouTube. So that very niche field, I am the top there. I don't think other guys who do theology have thought that much about the wildlife thing as I have. I'll say that is my gold standard. That's where I'm one of the best. Otherwise, in terms of the other topics, you have a slew of other apologists to listen to. It's like, do I really have to respond to everything? I mean, let's say a video comes out of some dude doing a heretical thing and arguing against the Orthodox. Well, immediately, you're probably going to get Jay doing a stream. You're going to get clip shows doing a stream. You're going to get non-Orthodox, like Catholics and such, doing a stream. Sig and so on, and Ananda, whatever his name is, are going to do a stream. Then Agent is going to come in from Apostolic Orthodoxy, the Miaphysite, Oriental Orthodox channel. I'm going to say why all the EOs are wrong. It's like, why do I need to throw my hat into that ring when the subject has been covered? So I'm going to cover stuff that hasn't been covered, so you have a unique perspective. Otherwise, I don't feel the need to like debunk people when I think I've already done that. That's it. All right. All right. Jean is right. A lot of religious Muslimin in the Middle East dress Western. They may even be more radical than a, quote, conservative Gulf Arab. Yeah, that's true. Like, a lot of the Gulf Arabs are conservative socially and religiously, but it's just, like, guys, conservatism doesn't always mean religious fanatic, and religious fanatic does not always mean conservative. So you could have guys who dress like that guy's not super religious, and they end up harboring more hatreds toward a certain denomination, whether that's a Christian or a Shia or whatever, compared to your average guy in Saudi who, yeah, he's probably got some stereotypes and doesn't like certain groups either, but will he do anything about it? Probably not, because he's got kind of a cushy life and they have their own tribal culture there, and this is kind of not a need to do any of that stuff, and I don't think anybody really wants to, other than like talking shit on the internet. Whereas in Egypt and Syria, there are people who do things and have hatreds, even though they don't dress conservatively. By conservative, I mean they don't dress in a tribal manner. The Filioque started in Visigothic Spain. I believe that's true, as a matter of fact. I believe the Latins who invented the Filioque were from Visigothic Spain. They were not, Italian popes. They were from Spain. I'm in the Antiochian. What's the difference between true and genuine Orthodox? You can ask, do at NFTU. I can't answer that. I don't know. Would you say the Musals in the Arab world from countries with native Christians tend to be less sectarian or more? More. And it's not because they don't have Christian, it's not because they have Christian friends or something and they hate them. It's the opposite. When you're a Lebanese Muslim, let's say, there's many reasons to dislike Christians. Whereas if you're a Saudi, there's only really one reason, which is pure theology. Or maybe like, yeah, it's like mainly theology. Oh, I don't think the Christians are conservative enough, and I don't like their Trinity, so I don't like them. That's it. If you're Saudi, that's it. It's just 100% theology and maybe like a little bit of pride. Whereas if you're Lebanese, there's many reasons to dislike. Well, in the past, the Maronites had the lion's share of the economy, and the French helped them to establish Lebanon. So in terms of politics and money, we don't like the Christians. And in terms of sectarianism, well, their political parties are against ours, so we don't like them. In the Civil War, they killed us and we killed them, so we don't like them. And their village is this and my village is that. So you see how it could have nothing to do with theology whatsoever, but because they're competing for resources and they're competing in one country, they're going to dislike each other. Even in Syria, which at a time was 75% Sunni, now is more like 60, and it could go back up to 75 if more people come back to the country. They're still going to dislike the Christians in some ways because, well, Assad said that the Christians are for him. So they're pro-Ba'ath. They're in the Ba'ath government, and they're against us, and they're pro the guy who was destroying us. Now, it must be stated, the vast majority of Christians didn't care, and they didn't vote for Bashar because they didn't have those kind of elections there, and they were mostly rigged. So that wouldn't have made a difference. And Christians never acted in anything. Like Christians in Syria, they never had the power to actually enforce any policy. They didn't join the army. They were just like, leave me alone and let me eat my bread and my cheese and my olives. Just leave me alone. So their situation is different than the Maronites who actively, took dominion, you could say. But no, I would definitely say the ones in the countries with them come up with the conspiracies and they have political and economic reasons to dislike each other. Whereas in Saudi, Christian's never done anything to him, so he's just gonna talk shit on the internet, if anything. If anything. Oh, well, he refuses, so there you go. I want to know, is pork a cat or a dog? Pork is a cat. This is his nickname. His real name's Cairo. I only have one pet. His name's Cairo, but I call him Pork. Call him Peak, Pork, Peaky, and whatever other name suits him. He's got a weird thing with his eyeball. If anyone in the crowd is a vet, let me know. A veterinarian, because his eye is dripping a little tear. Just one of them, and he's been sneezing all week, so I think he's got a head cold. And I think that's the obvious answer, that he has a head cold. Combined with that, he might have dust and allergens inside his eyeball. So, but if it's not ready, it's not better in a few days, we definitely want to take him into the vet. That's what the thought is here. Anyway. Oh, sorry guys, I missed a bunch of comments I was responding. Muslimin follow the hadith, not just the Quran. Yep. Did you see the room and the Orientals being more friendly with one another now that the Coptic Pape visited every EO country? Like I said, the laity in real life, most of them don't even know the distinctions of the difference. They just know we're not in communion, but we're part of Orthodox civilization, which means we're more conservative. The priests have beards. We fast more. We were under the Ottomans and so on. That's what it means culturally to be Orthodox. That's what it means. So culturally, we are not like the Catholics and Protestants. And so the Ethiopians will say that, and they'll get along with Greeks, even though theologically they have some issues with them. Gene, you said in one of your videos that having an Orthodox church nearby has no impact on your salvation. This made me wonder, can you give me a quick rundown on your soteriology? My soteriology, I'm just mimicking what the church says. God works in mysterious ways is a real thing that you can say. And if someone does not have physical access to a church, they're in a situation that's different than the situation we have. having churches nearby. The Orthodox Church is not as legalistic, where, oh, hey, man, this guy took the Eucharist 90 times in his life, that other guy took it 9,000 times. So the guy who took it 90 times will definitely get into paradise, or 90 times won't get into paradise, but the one who took it 9,000 times will. It's not like that. It's different for every single individual based on their intent and based on their actions and based on how God judges them for the situation that they're in. So I don't have my soteriology. I don't have my soteriology. Emilion, thank you for the super chat. That's awesome. 19.99 USD. He says, why are there 60 people watching but 11 likes? Everyone go and give it a like. Yeah, please do. Like, you guys don't get to come on here and grift and ask me about Georgian pastries versus Armenian meat and stuff. Like the damn video. Emilion, haven't heard from you in a while because they closed Skype. So hit me up on my email or Telegram because we haven't talked in a while. Good friend of mine. Good friend. Thank you again for the chat. My eye is getting tired. Sorry, guys. I'm looking at the same thing. Jeem, I have a question for you. Wouldn't the papal supremacy being true or not be the deciding factor whether the filioque is right or no, since we are supposed to read the fathers and saints in the way of the councils? Well, no, because even if the Pope is supreme, the council was not meant to be changed for the creed. No word should be added because it changes the mode of God. It's like, how can you just change something like that? You need an excellent justification. And I hate to say it, but historically, the excuse was they thought it was in the original creed. A lot of people don't know this, but read, I forgot his name, first name, whatever, last name, Zirkov, Russian author. And he cites that the Spaniards who were popularizing the filioque, they genuinely thought that the Greeks took it out. Like, they didn't think we're adding something. If you told them, hey, you're just adding something and it's clearly not there whatsoever, they might have reacted differently. Thoughts on Agent? I've never interacted with him. I have not watched his streams other than one or two, like 5 minutes. I know he is a very intelligent OO. I don't know if all his arguments are good or in good faith, I should say, but he's intellectual. So I'll have to do some research. Gregory the Wonder Worker, Tertullian, and Origen followed something akin to the filioque. Well, akin to and then the official dogmatized version are different things. And like Tertullian had a weird trinity and Origen had a semi-Arian trinity. So I think it's safe to say that those two definitely were not correct in terms of monotheism. I don't know what you guys are talking about now. Okay. Well, guys, I mean, no, it was a different author. It's a more obscure book written in the 80s. I'll have to find it for you. I had to return to the library, and man, that book was in bad condition. All right, guys, I'm going to call it. My eye literally feels dehydrated from how much I've been talking. Thank you for listening to the Rift, the Teat, whatever. Another word from our sponsor, Pork Bird. What does Pork Bird have to say? Let's see what he says. You're going to cope, neat. You're a cope cuck, neat. Stop cope larping. And like the video. Well, thank you very much. You know, Pork Bird is actually a close cousin of PJ from Goof Troop, a goofy movie, and an extreme goofy movie. So that's why it sounds like that. It sounded like PJ a little. And this thing has wings as well. It's supposed to, like, the ad said it flies around the room, but in reality, you have to do it like that. Pork, get off the counter. There's nothing there. You're just vibrating on the counter and warming it up. He doesn't bathe himself, so. All right. Truly, he's risen. Good night. It says Two Crooks. Good night, and since my parents are back in Canada, I can't wait to show them your book. See, now we're entering real life because parents are reading the book. It's not just Cope Neats on the Cope internet. I'm going to Kuwait again soon. Yes, Goof Troop is the gold standard. All right, guys.